Hey, good morning. Scott Luton, Greg White with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Gregory, how we doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
It's been a challenging Monday. It was a challenging weekend. Of course,
Uh-oh.
our beloved Atlanta Braves lost the young phenom Ronald Acuna Jr.
Yeah.
Due to
God.
injury, and it was really tough to watch. But he'll be back, and as he says, if he was giving 500% to this point, he's going to double down and give 1,000% when he gets back on the field. So he'll be back soon.
Wow. Well, it's been a rough season in a lot of ways uh, for the Braves, hasn't it? I
That's
mean,
right.
they've had some on field and off field difficulties, right?
Agreed. Agreed. But it's good just to have sports back. And we were talking pre-show. We got team members, making plans to go to concerts, which is awesome to hear. We got folks. We were able to get together for dinner last week. We got sports back. All of that is certainly some good news, right?
Well, yeah. As long as you're not making plans to go to the Tokyo Olympics because they just banned fans from that.
Oh goodness.
And I'm a huge fan of the U.S. Open, and my wife and I and some friends, we usually go many, many years, if not every year. It seems like it's been more than just a year that we had not gone, but um, they're still promoting buying tickets, but I wonder how long that's going to last.
Mm.
Right? The numbers, at least in the States, don't seem to present that big of an issue, but you just never know.
You never
Some of
know.
this is real, like it is in so many of these Asian countries. Some of it is optics for these governments, so they don't wind up feeling the backlash of the community if they're wrong,
Mm.
and rightfully so. They should be very, very cautious about this.
Yep. Well, uh, we're going to tackle a ton. You mentioned governments. I think today
Yeah,
is going to be like the White House version of the supply chain buzz. We got a lot of stuff to get into, and I'm so glad you're here to help make heads or tails of some of these stories we're going to be talking about.
don't give me too
Um,
much credit.
well, we should mention though. So today is the supply chain buzz. It comes at you every Monday, 12 noon Eastern time. We're talking about some of the key stories and issues taking place really across global business. Today's show is powered by our friends over at OMNIA Partners, where they
Yeah,
are reshaping, Greg, the future of purchasing. In fact, I'd say they're reshaping the current state of purchasing, right?
yeah. Especially they're what's called a GPO, right? A group purchasing organization, and they do a lot of the negotiation for a lot of companies and create economies of scale. So this is not something that's new to the industry. I think over the past, gosh, Scott, what is it, year or two, we have talked to a number of their folks there who are, as we've determined, built for this, right? They are built to help companies do this. And as procurement has become more and more in the spotlight, just like broader based supply chain, I think it's important for companies to really figure out how to be really, really effective. Imagine the difficulty getting indirect and direct materials for companies these days with all of what's going on in supply chain. Having somebody who has a broader purview over the marketplace feels really, really important these days. It feels like it would be really so much more powerful than a company going it on their own.
Agreed. Agreed. You can't have enough true subject matter experts to weigh in and help you navigate through today's
Yeah.
business environment. And Omnia Partners are just that. And Greg and I, as Greg has mentioned, we've had a chance to see it up close and personal, and as well as get feedback from the marketplace. So speaking of Greg, Omnia Partners, we've got a great opportunity for all of our friends across our global community to get to know them better. So we are going to be in Miami at their big annual event coming up in September,
That's right.
called
I like them even better now.
Connections 2021. So get this, Greg. So first off, we love folks that offer free events to come out and network, take in the keynotes, professionally develop, and attend the expo, the whole 9 yards, right? I think they even have Jeff Foxworthy, I think this year as kind of the comic relief. but it's free for supply chain sourcing and purchasing leaders. So check that out. 400 plus attendees having a great time down in Magic City, which is one of Miami's nicknames. That was new to me, Greg.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Is okay.
There was a few others, but I chose maybe the easiest one to talk about. We're going to be broadcasting live down there in person in Miami, or Miami, as Bobby Bowden used to say.
Yes.
September 27th through the 29th. You can check out more via the convenient link we have dropped in the show notes. And come out and join us. At a very minimum, make sure you connect with the OMNIA Partners team. They offer a ton of expertise, a ton of resources for folks making big purchasing and other business decisions, right?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity to connect with folks. Kevin, who runs the joint, and Ara, who you've seen on our shows before, they're pros. They're just professionals, and there's so much you can learn from them that can improve your business.
That's right. Absolutely. So check it out. Again, we'll be down there September 27th through the 29th. The link to learn more is in the show notes. All right, so moving right along, I hope my mouse battery is not going to die. We'll see here. I might be leaning on the production team. So webinar, before we get to September, which is chock full of events, you name it, tons of learning opportunities. July 27th, we've got Kevin L. Jackson and I are hosting a webinar focused on digital transformation that accelerates and strengthens your supply chain. So join us there July 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. The link for that is also in the show notes. And I think my mouse has given up the ghost, Greg. We'll see. We shall
It's
see.
Okay. I'm sitting here listening to LinkedIn alerts every time somebody likes or comments on something.
Well, I know
I turned that off.
you were dropping some great POV earlier today, which we're going to touch on here momentarily. So
Man,
we better be
did
prepared.
that fire some people up too, by the way. Wow.
All right. So we just talked about what's coming up in July. Also, August 18th, we're going to be talking with the folks from Quip, and our friends from Alloy. So we're going to be, Greg and I are going to be hosting a conversation with Imran Patel about really focused on what you can learn from a digital-first DTC or direct-to-consumer brand. They've had quite an omni-channel revolution, I'd call it, at Quip, and you're going to hear it firsthand here. And Greg, Quip, Amanda, who's behind the scenes along with Jada
Right.
and Jay making the production happen, Amanda's been a long-time big fan of how they do business over there at Quip.
Well, and Amanda has beautiful teeth, so I think that speaks a lot to. No, seriously, not just the brand and not just what we can learn from a supply chain standpoint, but to the quality of this product. And to me, that is as much the power of direct to consumer as anything is. I've worked for retailers. I've been the person who made the decision on whether a product hit the shelf or not. Now a company can build a good product. They can build a groundswell with influencers and social media and growth hacking, as people love to call it, and they can create a place for them themselves in the marketplace that allows them to, I wouldn't say bypass necessarily, because Quip is also in major retailers now, but they didn't start there.
Right.
And it creates a tremendous amount of opportunity, and I think that opportunity and that dynamic is so valuable for established brands to learn, as well as so many brands attempt to go direct or at least offer a direct alternative to going to the retailer. And as so many retailers are trying to go to e-commerce. Right. Stunning, the number of retailers who hadn't even really contemplated e-commerce until this COVID-19 seismic societal disruption, right? So I think there's a lot that everyone in every phase of the supply chain can learn from this company. Sounds weird, right? To think of a company like this that is started so small and really started with one product can teach us so much, but it's a tremendous, having had some preliminary discussions with them. It's a really tremendous story.
Yep. Terrific. And join us August 18th, 12 noon to learn a lot more. You can register in the link via the comments here. Okay, I want to stop for just a second. And Greg, if you've got access to your mouse, I'm
I
going to let
do.
you say hello to folks today, if that works. That's going to give me a chance
Oh,
behind the
sure.
green curtain to swap out some batteries. Can we do
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Okay, so you're not supposed to tell people when I'm doing that for you.
Hey, we're a transparent bunch around
Oh,
here.
you know what, Scott? I can't do that because I'm not logged in on the account that does
Okay,
that.
that's okay. That's okay. Let me see if
You,
we can. First off, why don't you? So as I do this here for a second, Greg.
as we go through these hardware changes,
Yep.
right? I'm now on a totally different device for
Right.
broadcasting, which one doesn't have a mouse; it only has a touchpad, which I need to fix. And
Yeah.
you guys get to see how the sausage is made today. And
Well,
also, I'm not logged into the account that has that kind of control. I'm sorry, Scott.
I
I
think we're
failed.
good.
I
I just
failed.
swapped it. I think we're good. We're
See,
back to normal. We
right.
swapped some things around, and we are back to operating at full capacity.
That's
So,
good.
with that said,
If nothing else, all I
let's.
did was kill time by confessing our sins, right?
That's right. All right. So, hello, Paul. Greetings from Sierra Leone, he says. Great to have you here. Looking forward to your POV. We have Santosh dialed in via LinkedIn from India. Hello, Santosh. Ramadeep, greetings from Canada via LinkedIn. Great to have you here. Looking forward, folks. I hope you brought your POV today because we're going to be tackling some topics and some stories that we're going to want to hear from you. Mohammed, once again, greetings. Let's see. KSA. My acronyms are failing me right now. Greg.
Oh my gosh, what am I
So, Mohammed, let us know where you're
let us
dialed
two
in from.
ignorant dudes know what KSA is.
Right.
I,
He's with
I,
us.
I know it. It's just I'm blanking on it.
Well, great to have you regardless, Mohammed, via
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Of course, Peter Bolay, all night and all day, is with us. Hey, Peter, hope this finds you well. Looking forward to your event with us in a couple of weeks. Nerfad, couldn't miss this rant. Well, hey,
So
Nerfad,
I think
really,
he also commented on it on LinkedIn.
right,
So yeah.
right. Saudi Arabia, KSA. We should have known that. Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Oh, of
Mohammed, my
course.
apologies there. Greetings and great to have you here.
I had never, honestly, had never heard it called that before. I hadn't thought about that.
Nerfad, buckle up, get ready. I've enjoyed seeing your vacation pics across social media.
No
Hey,
doubt.
Mohib is with us, Greg.
Of course. Thank you, by the way, for joining us.
Tuned
Feels like
in
we're back
from
home.
Wichita, Kansas, the air capital of the country. Mervyn Daniel, once again. Hey, Mervyn, talk about people that keep it real. We expect to hear from you here today. Hope this finds you well. Tuned in via LinkedIn. Is it Lorray? Is my hunch is a T is silent. If I got it wrong, please let us know. So welcome. Happy start to the week, she says. Greetings from Venezuela. She's tuned in via LinkedIn. Old TV, Tom Valentine's with us, Greg. You got a special
Wow.
message for Tom?
I do. I found a lake house for you, Tom. It's not in your budget though.
Well, hey, we do look forward to getting out and playing some golf with Tom really soon.
Yeah, that's
Gregory,
right. So is that the answer, Scott? Let's just
yes.
share everything with the community today. Is that your answer? You're in for that?
Not for that one tournament because we've got a little bit of work to do that day.
Okay,
But Tom's
right.
got an inside track for highfalutin folks like Greg White.
So
He can
one of
bring,
these times we need to just replay Tom's video that
right.
we did at Modex.
Yes,
We should bring that on the air. Just
we
start
will.
everyone's week with that.
Definitely. We sure will. Gregory's back with us. Gregory, I think from the Caribbean, if I'm not mistaken. He was with us last week. Great to have you here once again. He's tuned in via LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Kelvin, appreciate your feedback here. This is a great platform for all of us in this group learning new things and also exchange with global supply chain team members. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Excellent point, Kelvin. Appreciate that feedback. And welcome to everybody. Okay, so let's do this, Greg. Let's dive into the first story here. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm
Ready
ready.
to go? Okay.
Oh
Well,
yeah.
it's really the
Sorry.
second one. The
I'm
second
sorry. I've
one.
got my monitor way over here, so I'm going to have to do that monitor thing I've been making fun of for weeks on
The
it.
second story is what we're really looking forward to hearing your take on. But in the meantime, we got this first story here. So last week, the White House announced more moves against Chinese companies with regard to alleged abuse of Uyghur civilians and other Muslim ethnic minorities. Did I say that right, Greg?
It is. Yeah.
Okay.
Weird.
Right.
Yeah.
The Biden administration, let me tackle a couple. I'm going to share a couple of high points from the story, and then, Greg, I'm going to come to you and get your take here. The Biden administration added 14 Chinese companies to a trade blacklist, according to the U.S. Commerce Department. The move was made due to these companies' alleged role in enabling, quote, Beijing's campaign of repression, mass detention, and high technology surveillance, end quote, against Muslim minorities in China, particularly in the Zhejiang province. I think I got that right, too.
Xinjiang. Close.
Xinjiang.
Yeah.
Close. Gosh, I got the wrong emphasis on the wrong
Emphasis on the wrong syllable.
So, Xinjiang province. CBS News reports, and there was no alleged in this next comment. CBS News reports that the Chinese government has detained 1 million or more people in that province since 2017. The Trump and Biden administrations have both used the word genocide for what the Uyghur population has been subjected to in China. Wow, strong language there. So, Greg, over to you. What's your take on this move here?
Well, if anyone's heard me talk about this in the past, my take is that genocide might be a kindness for these people, because this is a continued methodology of repression and slavery. Though the administration won't say it, it isn't in fact what it is. And many companies with names that over 86 companies that are not Chinese companies contribute to this problem by using companies who use this labor in this Xinjiang province, some of which the names of very, very well. And we've published a list that addresses that in the past. And you may have heard us report some months ago about the fact that the U.S. government was going to assume that companies who operate in the Xinjiang province are conducting it via slavery, unless they could prove that they were not. That means that these 14 companies that have been added to this list, were unable to prove that they are not using slave labor, these Uyghurs, as slave labor to do their business. So, to quote the great Ricky Bobby, if you keep doing business this way, then you. So,
well,
this is ridiculous. That there's nothing, of course, that our government can do about it. It's good to blacklist these companies. It's good to notify American companies. It would be better if these American companies, who are otherwise so high and mighty on all of their other social issues, would refuse to continue to do business with companies that are so clearly conducting business by using slave labor.
Yep. I think, regardless of your take on it, I love the growing spotlight that's being put on the abuses of certainly in China as it relates to human trafficking or slavery, as Greg has alluded to, because supply chain leaders have something to do about it, and a big responsibility to do something about it. So, interesting report coming out of CBS. The White House adding these 14 companies, that will have a ripple effect for sure. But Greg, we'll be tracking the story, continually. It's one of the big stories of arguably of our generation. And
it's not unique. By the way, slavery is not unique to China. It's just that so many American companies contribute to it. That's the travesty. We can't do anything about the slavery problems in India necessarily. We have done things about the slavery problems and conflict minerals in Africa.
Yep.
Right? We just refuse. The American companies just continue to refuse, and they're not all American. Some are German, Adidas, and others like that, who continue to contribute to this problem. And so that's what needs to be highlighted as much as these companies that the government is blacklisting.
Yeah, excellent point. Hey, appreciate what Korai Koze has said here. He says, I love that you take on the most difficult issues and openly talk about the interdependencies. Excellent point. Appreciate that.
That's because nobody can fire me, Korai. I have nothing to lose, and I never will. So,
all right. So we'll be tracking this story. I really appreciate CBS reporting very openly and frankly. But as we both know, there's a ton of Chinese ties to the entertainment industry, or the
yeah,
media industry, and the news industry, the movie making
shoe
industry here in the
industry.
U.S. So it's good to see this
Yeah.
type of reporting. Okay, so I'm going to tee up this next story, and then Greg, I'm going to before you dive in, give me a minute
Yeah.
because I got to prep. Okay, so let's tee up this second story here. So in other White House news, I mentioned this. It's White House Monday here. Supply chain buzz. The Biden administration's making big waves as the president signed a wide-ranging executive order with a whopping 72 initiatives involved, including more than a dozen agencies. So we are still dissecting all the moving pieces here. But there's a great article here in Supply Chain Dive via Matt Leonard, which you can join. I think we'll drop that link in the comments. So we're still dissecting it. But at a high level, Greg, the White House's goal, it states, is to increase competition to bring down prices across global supply chain. Now, Greg, hang on a sec. I need to get ready here for your commentary. So I brought my handy dandy goggles, and let's see here. I had to load up the truck and bring some fire extinguishers here, Greg, just in case your POV got kind of hot. But
Yeah.
Tell us, kidding aside, let's talk about your take, because you put it out there on social media earlier today. Kind of went through it and told folks very transparently what you thought. What's your take here on this executive order?
When has the government ever gotten involved and prices have gone down? That's all. No, I'm kidding. Look, the solution to the problems that have been generated in many cases largely by the government is not for the government to get more and more involved, right? And particularly to use impotent organizations like the Federal Maritime Commission, who I have published many summaries on their inaction or inability to produce action in regards to fairly simple things like the port congestion, right? And their mandates, if you want to call it that, mandates without teeth, apparently, that have been completely ignored by the carriers to this point. So what we have to understand is that even our government, the U.S. government, has limited authority over companies that have no operations or have few operations, or at least have primary operations outside of the United States. So it's difficult for them to do anything. And a lot of this problem is begotten by the brother-in-law deals that the U.S. government and all governments, frankly, have done since the beginning of their existence. We wouldn't have the kind of exclusivity in the railroads that the president talks about here, that he's trying to get railroads to share their rails, because in the States, the company owns the rails, not the country. And those agreements were made with the robber barons, the Carnegies and the Rockefellers and the whomevers, the Flaglers, as you mentioned the other day, Scott, way back when cronyism and graft and outsized influence of these millionaires now would be literally trillionaires in these days, when these millionaires held so much sway over the government that they basically got to do whatever they want. And the government is complicit in other companies essentially having the ability to do whatever they want. Companies like Twitter and Google and Apple and Amazon, and also complicit in enabling even greater control of those companies today. So I'm maybe more than a little bit dubious of the government's ability to really do anything here. Now, you have to juxtapose that also with the inherent conflict of interest, and lack of knowledge that politicians have. Their conflict of interest being they're always trying to get reelected, so they're going to do what's expeditious. And this is a surface level. This particular executive order, much like the previous supply chain executive order, it's effectively hand waving. It doesn't really do anything. It encourages. If you see the words, they're very carefully chosen. It encourages and And, they use other mitigating words that really, if you read between the lines, mean that nothing will or can get done by the government. So that's really concerning. And then of course, you've got the juxtaposition of their lack of power, their lack of willpower, and their lack of knowledge, which can only complicate things, because they will do what's expeditious, as all governments do, and what is, public, but they won't do anything of any great depth, and that's going to potentially create some much, much larger problems down the road.
So, and Sheldon, as
you have the fire extinguisher handy?
I do. Sheldon, great to have you back. You were with us a few weeks back. Great to have you back. And yes, Greg will always tell you exactly, and that's important, right? That's really important. It's a big part of our transparency here, and I benefit from that frank feedback all the time. But I want to share some of the other comments here, Greg.
Yeah, let's do. I hope somebody disagrees with me and has much more faith in our government than I do.
So Tom says, and going back to the first story, he says, in the apparel business, specifically licensing apparel, you're required to go through an official audit of your manufacturing and your suppliers to ensure that child labor is not being engaged along the process to produce products. It is costly, mandatory, and it issues certifications. Okay.
That's true, but this isn't the Uyghur situation is not child labor, and there is no requirement.
Yeah.
As we know, because Nike is one of the biggest offenders, and they're one of the biggest licensed apparel providers in the planet. So, but I do like that, Tom, as an opening to maybe we just have the same requirement for licensing apparel, no slave labor, right?
Yeah.
No forced labor, however we have to euphemize it for.
Right. Jerry says, everything is getting cheaper and better, except two things: education and healthcare. What do those two things have in common? Heavy government regulation. Interesting comment there, Jerry. Thanks for being here via LinkedIn. Appreciate that POV. Peter says, interesting commentary back on what Tom just shared on this topic. One can pass the audit and then replace or do what one wants subsequently and roll the dice going forward. It's like the supplier code of conducts that require suppliers to comply with the laws of their country. That's an excellent point, isn't that, Greg?
Yeah, it is an excellent point, because that's, it is effectively lawless on this topic in China. I mean, this is government sponsored slavery and oppression.
Yep.
Right. So it is arguably legal in their country. I don't know the details of that.
So Mervyn shares, similar can be observed as what Tom's talking about in the palm oil industry, with expensive certifications, which usually end up being order winners instead of being an order qualifier. Excellent point there, Mervyn.
Yeah.
Great to have you here today. Let's see here. Bill. Hello, Bill. He says government regulations typically create more inefficiencies than the perceived problem being solved. Bill, that's a good point. We were talking infrastructure last week.
Yeah.
And look, Greg and I may differ a little bit here, because I think when it comes to infrastructure, I invite government action, but as we agreed last week, it's got to be the right action, the right investment, with transparency and spotlight, so that these backroom deals and these, backslapping deals,
redirection of funds, which has been traditionally the case, right?
Right. That's one of my biggest frustrations, the fraud, waste, and abuse that can go on throughout these massive pieces of infrastructure.
If only the government would adhere to the requirements that it puts upon independent companies, right?
Agreed. And let's see here. I'm going to read this. Might still be Korai, and Amanda and Clay, y'all let me know. Government has a place when there's a crisis to overcome individual opportunistic gains at the cost of the people. Not sure if rail capacity is a crisis situation like that. Maybe this new executive order is the U.S. version of the China Belt and Road Initiative.
Well, so we have laws that address that, right? That address things called profiteering. And so it doesn't require an executive order if that's what the government believes, is that there is price gouging, is what we call it in the States. If that exists, see, this is the difficulty. There is there is a legal methodology for this, but that legal methodology doesn't make any headlines.
Right.
Right. So
Right.
we need to make headlines as if we're attempting to do something in order to garner the favor of the American people to get reelected. You can see where it's very circular like that.
Well, appreciate your take on this. Appreciate all the great comments. For
Yeah.
the sake of time, we're going to move forward and tackle our next story. And this one's a lot easier, maybe a lot easier, and it's good news here. We're talking about we're kind of doing an update to the story from a few weeks back. The USMCA is tackling an early speed bump, right? So, as reported by Industry Week, the U.S. and Mexico governments last week announced they had resolved a labor complaint in a speedy fashion, for that matter. It was the first successful activity involving the USMCA's rapid response labor mechanism, which was one of the key upgrades over NAFTA. So, Greg, in a nutshell, this involved a labor union voting complaint at a General Motors plant in Mexico. Ballots were reportedly destroyed by one of the unions if they didn't like how the vote went, and the U.S. asked Mexico to investigate. So, good news here. It's being remedied. A new vote's going to be taken in August with 5 times as many inspectors, as reported here by Industry Week. So, Greg, any thoughts here?
Well, I think USMCA is such an incredible upgrade over NAFTA. For those not in the States who don't know, it has greatly simplified and unified the North American nations, those Mexico, U.S., and Canada, and enabled us to take this vast continent that we live on and enable business more effectively and enforce some fairness doctrines. And that's really what this is about, is that ability to report and be supported by nations that are arguably, even considering our previous discussion, arguably more legitimate and mature than Mexico. For them to get that kind of assistance, I think, is really, really powerful for that organization, because this is simply the way that things are done in many cases in Mexico. But to be able to lean on their trading partners, or even just to lean on the requirements of their trading partners in order to redo this injustice, it's powerful stuff for a country like that.
Agreed. And I love, when I see advancements like this and improvements over NAFTA, it just brings to my mind a lot of good news, which is we've got such a unique trade partner situation here in the Western Hemisphere between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. Especially if we very intentionally and successfully look for ways where it benefits all parties, so I look forward to more good news coming out of this USMCA, as it's already been passed, enacted, implemented, and as Greg, you're alluding to, big improvement over NAFTA. So stay tuned. Hey, want to say hello to a few folks. Nick Rumor is with us via YouTube. Hey, Nick, great to see you. Hope this finds you well. Love the content you throw out there on LinkedIn in particular. Very uplifting content. I like Nick's I like Nick's leadership style.
Yeah.
Dr. Rhonda Bumpenza Zimmerman. Hey, speaking of great content, I've enjoyed yours. Hey, you're late to the party. That's okay. We'll have it on recording.
It's tough, right? We have sprung forward. So she's 3 hours behind us. I mean, even though she's in Arizona, she might as well be in California, because they don't change time.
That's right.
Which is smart.
Rhonda's out there making it happen across the industry. So I appreciate any time we get from you here, Rhonda, on our LinkedIn or on our Supply Chain Buzz. Okay. So, Greg, moving right along, this next story is an interesting one.
It is really interesting. I'm glad you dropped this in here.
So, well, I did just for you, my friend. I think this might illustrate maybe some of your regular comments about how supply chain is reported. So, and for folks that are certainly in our community here and on this live stream, a lot of this stuff are stuff you already know. But I enjoy a couple of these comments here. So, as reported by Yahoo Finance, this is a new report from S&P Global Research, and the headline reads there, it's supposed to point to 3 major ways that supply chains are broken. However, Greg, I thought the headline was a little bit misleading, especially as you work down through the article, because I thought the story focused more on some of the kind of the underlying trends that
Hmm.
are deeply impacting global supply chain management today. So, but I should to be fair, this was the first of I think 3 releases. So maybe that might clarify that point there. So I picked up 5 trends from this article. First, of course, one, historic demand, Greg. We've talked about that incessantly. 2, falling inventories, right? Nothing new. 3, no one can find components. How many times we've talked about semiconductors in automotives as just an example? Last week we talked about the patio furniture, right?
Right.
Folks are using catalogs to order patio furniture. 4, lockdowns impact on the workforce, especially manufacturing. You've talked a lot about that. We're still seeing that to some degree in some of these global ports. And then 5, this is one really right up your alley, Greg. The article talks about underinvestment in logistics. It points to the historic consumer demand being addressed with a, quote, essentially fixed supply of logistics services during the first half of 2021, end quote. On that last point, the article also points to tons and tons of new investment globally in supply chain. So, Greg, your thoughts here?
Well, I'm not surprised, but again, what do I want to say? Triggered. Let's say triggered by the fact that they're ignoring the biggest point, which is we have been paying people, and this goes back to the contribution that the government made to the problems to begin with. We are paying people to stay at home, right? The U.S. government is supplementing unemployment benefits to the tune of $300 to $600 a week for people to stay at home, not search for work. Right? They have had none of those issues, and and basically when there are plentiful jobs. Now let's also recognize that coming into this pandemic, the supply chain industry just in the U.S. had 2 million jobs that remained unfilled. So there is clearly a labor gap in this industry. But that to me is a much bigger problem today than any of these things that have been described here, right? The reason that, of course, we had historic demand. I mean, I don't even know if I would call it historic demand. It's more like in great excess to any historic demand and impossible to predict demand, was because of the cessation of commerce that occurred over the course of just a few days, basically globally, but certainly here in the United States, right? As we said early on in this, with the great toilet paper shortage of 2020, we don't have a supply problem. We have a demand problem. I have actually talked to people in recent weeks, actually when I was in Wichita, who still have toilet paper from when they originally hoarded toilet paper in March of 2020. So, I think this is a great example, Scott, to your point, of someone who knows nothing about supply chain, reporting on supply chain from a macro level without an understanding of the underlying or a refusal to address the underlying reasons that they choose to avoid, as evidenced by their hyperbolic and, as you said, inaccurate headline. So this is more about clicks than accurate information, this particular article, in my opinion.
Excellent point. And it got mine, dadgummit. But I enjoy reading.
Well, I think it's good to point this out, because this has to be and probably should be an irritant to people in the supply chain practice, because the supply chains are decidedly not broken, right? It is government intervention. It is government manipulation. It is basically a commerce cold war between countries that has caused so much of this problem.
A commerce cold war. Wow.
I
A new
just came up with that.
Greg White-ism there. Well, a lot of good stuff, a lot of good reading, a lot of different takes out there. We've been talking about here as we wrap this article via Yahoo Finance, but this is really, it's based on research put out by the S&P Global Research. So y'all check that out.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to share a couple of comments here, Greg, and then we're going to keep driving here. So Stephanie's with us here today. Stephanie, welcome via LinkedIn. She says, going through crisis mode with Malaysia shutdowns right now.
Wow,
QV
really?
is going to be the worst. Oh, man, that's bad.
Wow,
That's bad.
Malaysia really kind of dodged a bullet early on, and they opened up really relatively early. So, and they had been doing great until a certain point.
Right. Nick talks about the flawed system. Rhonda says, I can't believe they're still dishing out all that money. So many opportunities across the world. I apologize. Your comments about, I appreciate probably your comments about this issue. I bet
if she also wants to apologize for my comments, I would also accept that as assistance as well. Thank you.
Let's see here. And she continues to say, fears creating unhealthy, unhelpful behavioral choices. Nurfad says, forest pine cones do wonders. Way better than that hoarded 2-ply, 3-ply stuff available. Oh, goodness gracious. Mohib says, commerce coldware. This term should be in a textbook. Hey, how about that?
If it were in a textbook, it could already be in a textbook, AA. As you know, I've never read one. So,
all right. I'll tell you, we are moving right along. I thought we would be at the top of the hour by now, but this is good. I want to carve some time out.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot across social media about the passing of really a legendary figure in global business, and I just want to share a couple things here, Greg. So, Roddy Martin passed away last week. Leaders from across industry around the world have been mourning. We've seen it. You probably have seen it as well across LinkedIn, other social. Corinne Bursa, I think, had the opportunity. One of our hosts here, host Tech Talk, had the opportunity to rub elbows with Roddy. So Mr. Martin was well known for his expertise, especially in digital transformation, change management, and many other areas. Jake Barr, if you remember him, Greg, he joined us for a live stream a month or two back on Tech Talk here, Supply Chain Now. So he reached out via LinkedIn and shared this commentary that I'm about to quote from. This was composed by Kevin O'Mara from Amazon. And I'm going to quote from this at the tail end. It's not going to do it justice. This will be published. So look for this in some upcoming trade publications. But he says, quote, I was traveling once with Roddy in his native South Africa when he introduced me to the concept of Ubuntu. I think I said that right. Mm-hmm. It is a Zulu term for humanity, which he translated to me as roughly, I am because we all are. He invoked the idea in response to my musings about how supply chain can save the world. To him, my audacious premise was perfectly reasonable because he could already see the connections between each and all of us, end quote. Again, that's by Kevin O'Mara from Amazon, focused on his experiences, some of his journey with Mr. Roddy Martin. So all the best to Mr. Martin's family, friends, and colleagues. He passed away on July 9th last week. And we all do certainly share responsibility, Greg, to build on his legacy and service, especially history of service to global business, improving the industry for all, to kind of borrow from that quote there. Your thoughts?
So I've never met Roddy before, but I'm keenly aware of his 80-slide presentations that go into excruciating detail on the dynamics and interrelationships of supply chain, essentially the underpinnings of AMR research, whom Laura Cesari and Mike Griswold, who are often on this show, they come from, and continues to underpin some aspect of the perception and approach to supply chain excellence at Gartner. So far-reaching impact, very cerebral individual. I mean, kind of the Dalai Lama of supply chain, if you will. He thought about the world. He thought about supply chain at a much more ethereal level than a mathematical or an operational level. And I think that is to his credit. Frankly, he freed the minds of many of us to be able to think about things as they should be rather than just as they are, right? He is sort of the catalyst of my feeling that best practice, right, is often just an excuse for that's the way we've always done it.
Right.
and to think about things as they should be rather than the way that they are and the way that they've always been. So, unbelievable soul and incredibly knowledgeable and visionary person. Weird to say visionary in supply chain, at least up until now, but certainly he was one of the key visionaries of supply chain.
Agreed. So all the best wishes to the Martin family, and the huge network of folks that collaborated with him and love reading and will continue to be reading about the legacy he leaves behind. So now you mentioned Laura Cesari, and of course I'd be remiss if we did not talk about an upcoming opportunity to really connect with her and the whole team, and even better, folks, rock and roll leaders from across global supply chain that, much like Roddy Martin, because as you mentioned, pointed out, Laura was at AMR. And if I'm not mistaken, they had collaborated a good bit. So anyway, learn more about the upcoming Supply Chain Insights Global Summit is coming up in September. We've got a link for that in the show notes, and Greg and I look forward to, along with the rest of many of our hosts, hosting the virtual feed of that exclusively here at Supply Chain Now. So you can learn more at supplychaininsightsglobalsummit.com. Okay, so Greg, I'm going to pose this question to you here, and I think this comes from Korai, and he says, Greg, what's next up? Trade wars, third wave COVID, recession, any positive news on a Monday? It's one of our favorite questions, Greg. What's your answer here?
Yeah, I got to tell you, I don't think necessarily that the government doing hand waving with this executive order and some of these other things is necessarily bad news. I just don't expect much from it, and frankly expect more, particularly around the Uyghur issue. I mean, the president, he campaigned on that issue and has done largely nothing more than the previous administration had. So at least we are maintaining a relatively hard line. So don't get me wrong. It's not a negative outlook on the world. It's just a negative outlook on our government's abilities, our respective government's abilities to make the world a better place. They will not do that. They have not done that to date. So, but yeah, gosh, what is coming? I call myself a free agent futurist, mostly because nobody like IBM or SAP will pay me to be a futurist and pimp their programs as a futurist. So I'm not sure if I'm a good futurist, but I think we can expect continued easy money, which will continue to expand economies, and it will probably continue to impact inflation. But I think also, and this to me is good news, and I probably haven't expressed that here, but I think that some of the things that we're seeing in terms of price escalations are highly temporary. That includes shipping, that includes lumber, which, by the way, has already come down substantially from its peaks. It includes some of the things that we're starting to see. But as my mother brilliantly said the other day, there's lots of hidden inflation. And I think we may have talked about this on a show. In the United States, a half gallon of ice cream is no longer a half gallon of ice cream. You pay the same. You pay the same amount, but now it's 1.5 quarts instead of 2 quarts, right? And so we have to be on the lookout for that. And I think it behooves consumers to become very aware of that, and in the States, to start to check ourselves in terms of buying luxuries. For instance, beach houses, any vacation home is virtually impossible to buy in the States because they are literally going off the market fast as primary residences. RV sales are the greatest in, I think, the history of RVs. Motorcycles, boats, like I said, vacation homes, all Pelotons, all of these arguably luxury things are because the government is paying people to stay home, or at least not forcing them to look for work. That will change probably by September, and then we'll start to see probably a slight dip in the markets, a slight dip in the economy, but then it will come back as people start earning the money that the government has been handing them until that time. So, and everyone will have their revenge travel. Another fascinating term. Revenge travel is people who are traveling now because they haven't been able to travel for many, many months. I don't know if any of you did what some people did, which is bank plane tickets during COVID at the low prices that they are, and then travel, take advantage of the ability to move those tickets to any time and travel then. But now plane tickets are very difficult, very expensive, I should say. And also a seat on a plane is becoming difficult to come by. We flew recently and the plane was not full on a couple of the flights, but over full on other flights. Now, they've also pared back flights, but they're going to expand that back again. So I don't think there's a coming crash, but again, let me qualify that, as I often do, not an economist. In fact, I didn't even get good grades in economics, but I understand the basics of free markets and of supply and demand and equilibrium in the marketplace. And I feel like in so many areas, Scott, we're reaching equilibrium. In fact, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. I don't eat chicken wings right now because they're too expensive, right? I eat, what do they call them? Boneless wings, which is chicken nuggets. Okay. Well, at least it's breast meat, so it's good meat. It's not like the whipped chicken fat you get at McDonald's, but it's not as good as wings. I'm all about the wings, right? So when we get an indication, we should call this the wing index. We'll get an indication that inflation is coming back when you and I can afford chicken wings again, Scott.
Hey, were we supposed to stop eating chicken wings? Amanda, did you get that memo?
Well, maybe you found something that I haven't, but they're really expensive in Northwest Atlanta.
Well, here's some other good news. So Nick shares 2 million job openings in supply chain in the U.S. alone. That's great news. I would add to that list, and we celebrate good news every Friday very intentionally. It's good to call time out and find good news that folks are involved with across the markets. I'd add, Greg, bird and especially blue jay activity in our backyard is immense right now. I'm not sure what's going on in that aspect of nature, but it's awesome to see. We've got
blue jays tend to kind of come through here seasonally. I mean, it's only a few weeks. So
the Blue Jays and the Brown Thrashers are two rival gangs, and then
they are
around at our feeders. But kidding aside, I think I was really thinking about this over the weekend. I think one of the really big pieces of good news is the information and perspective exchange, and how much easier that is getting. I mean, this live stream I think is a great example, right? We're not relegated, as it wasn't too long ago, Greg, to have to be in person at events, at this dinner meeting here and this lunch meeting here and plant tour here. I mean, that's a wonderful thing, and it's good for industry. It's good for leadership. It's good for driving change, especially the meaningful change that we've kind of talked throughout some of these news stories here today that some folks are talking about in the comments. That's a great thing. That's a great thing. More and more awareness is great news here. That's
the inverse of so many of these stories, as Corey said, right? We are more aware of what's going on in Xinjiang province than we've ever been. And, we as consumers, the good news is we have the power to stop that. We can stop buying the brands that we know are contributing to this.
Yeah.
I think that's, that sort of thing is good news. As you said, the transparency of supply chain is going to improve performance of supply chain.
Right.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
And we got what we wanted. We've talked about this a lot. We got what we wanted. We wanted supply chain to have a seat at the table.
Right.
And now it's our time to shine.
Agreed. I want to share a couple more comments here. So Andy, great to have you back via LinkedIn. He says Ubuntu is supposed to be a Linux flavor. Did I hear the word right? If I said it, chances are you may not have heard it.
No, he's right. It is a flavor of Linux, but they've co-opted the name from its original. Yeah, from its original.
Gotcha. Jerry, so glad to see this China slave labor issue being discussed. And let's see here. Nick says he is still not traveling. We here in the UK are not allowed in just yet. Rhonda says, I'm an optimistic realist most of the time, but aware of our sometimes unhelpful choices from time to time. We all need to do our part to help with the growth and recovery process. Excellent.
So, just to be clear on this point, I'm an incredible optimist, but I refuse to ignore the negatives that impact that optimism. What I really, really fear is blind or uninformed optimism. Right? There's every reason to believe optimism. Look, I studied the Soviet Union when I was in college, right? Because I was going to be a diplomat, and there were millionaires and billionaires in the Soviet Union, a communist society, right? You can overcome anything that your government or your condition can do to, for, or against you. So I want everybody to understand that these are just things that I look out for, right, that help me maintain the optimism and hope of greater things. But I won't rely on government, and I won't delude myself into believing that it is not corrupt in doing so, right? Because those are the people that get caught in that trap.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if
you're. No, you're good. I'm not preaching. I'm just telling everybody. I just want everybody to understand that I think the world is a great place. You know my belief, Scott, that there is abundance in the universe, right? This is not a zero-sum game, right?
And it's also a serious responsibility for leaders to tackle the change that's got to be tackled, and not turn that blind eye, not turn that blind optimistic eye, because there's so much good news out there. It's easy to focus on that, but there's a lot more heavy lifting that's got to be done to address some of these situations and these injustices that we're talking about here today and on plenty of other shows. So I appreciate.
I got you, people. Yeah. I got you.
Well, Greg, I appreciate you jumping on and telling it straight. I think there needs to be a lot more of that as well across the content creation channels.
You're in the right place, folks, if you want that.
That's right. So, Peter, talking about travel as we wrap here, July 14th, he says, is my free-to-travel date. We'll have passed the 14 days since his second shot, but traveling even double-vaxxed requires too many hoops to be jumped.
Really?
And let's see. And, yes, 2 COVID tests, one prior and one post-travel.
Yes.
So he's going to be rediscovering some of the Canadian provinces. I'm with you there, Peter. Okay. So, Greg, we've covered a lot of ground here today. I want to kind of bookend this. Love what our friends over at OMNIA Partners are doing, folks. Be sure to check out Connections 2021. It's in person in September in Miami, Florida. What a beautiful city. We're looking forward to being there in person, broadcasting live the first day and knocking out some interviews in subsequent days. So y'all check that out, September 27th through the 29th, 2021. Gregory.
And imagine too. I mean, Laura's thing in Nashville. Look, I think we've shared that costs money. Is it $1,400 a seat, Scott?
Yep.
50. Well worth it. Maybe not within your personal range, but look, I think you've all experienced for free what you can learn from Laura. Imagine if your colleagues or your leadership team could engage with her and the quality leaders in a safe space, no vendor space, in a safe space for 3 days. That would be tremendously valuable. That is the kind of commitment that a supply chain professional can really gain from in tenfold to the cost, easily tenfold.
Excellent point. And here's
if you can't make 15 grand off of that, the knowledge that you gain, I would be stunned. I would say it'd probably be closer to 1.5 million if you could learn enough from this thing to make it worthwhile.
Love it. And a little extra incentive for folks that sign up for the virtual participation of that event in September. the Supply Chain Global Insights Summit, you get to join a private networking session with Laura Cesari. Now, it won't be one-on-one, to be very transparent, but if you haven't met her yet, you haven't had a chance to pose some questions to her and get her take and just connect with her, what a great add-in for folks that sign up for the virtual version.
When she dials her mind into that session, she'll be able to distill down some of what you hear into how to process it, right? How to use it going forward.
Yep. All right, folks, that is going to be the wrap for the Supply Chain Buzz for July 12th, 2021. Really appreciate the wealth of comments, the clarifications, your takes, your questions, even for some of these stories we tackled here today. Greg, big thanks for always fun to do this with you. Big thanks, though, Greg, to the folks behind the scenes, Amanda and Jada and Clay, and I think Allie even is with us. Really appreciate what all of y'all do, and hope everyone has a wonderful week. But if you hear one thing here today from today's live stream, hear this. We got to challenge you to do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. Greg didn't count. And on that note.
Oh, my God, I'm sorry. I'm just enjoying it so much. Also reading Sheldon talking about Lambos and Porsches on the streets in Jamaica. I've driven the streets in Jamaica. That's a very dangerous prospect. You could lose a Lambo in a couple of those streets.
Well, hey, we'll see. We'll see you back here, Sheldon, hopefully soon. Y'all have a wonderful week, and we'll see you back right here on Supply Chain Now real soon. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.